The black SUV pulled into the mansion driveway just as the sun was setting. Joshua Crawford stepped out, loosening his tie after a long flight from New York. He was supposed to be gone for another week, but something inside him whispered that he needed to come home early. The house looked perfect from the outside. The garden was trimmed, the lights were on, and everything seemed peaceful. But the moment he opened the front door, his heart stopped. There, in the middle of the grand marble hallway, stood his 8-year-old daughter, Emily. But she wasn't wearing the beautiful silk dress he had bought her. She wasn't laughing or playing with her toys. She was dressed in a faded gray maid's uniform that hung loose on her tiny body. Her hands were red and wrinkled, like she had been washing dishes for hours. Her once bright eyes looked tired and scared. Emily held a mop that was almost as tall as she was. Her little hands were shaking as she tried to clean a spill on the floor. She didn't even notice her father standing there at first. Hello family, welcome back. Please take a moment to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It truly means a lot to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. So sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Joshua felt his blood run cold. His daughter. His only child. The little girl who used to dance around this very hallway in princess gowns. Now she looked like a servant in her own home. Behind Emily stood Victoria, his new wife. She was leaning against the doorway with her arms crossed, watching the child work. When Victoria saw Joshua, her face went pale. "Joshua," she said, her voice shaky. "You're home early." Joshua didn't answer. He couldn't speak. His eyes were locked on his daughter, who had finally looked up and seen him. Tears filled her eyes instantly. "Daddy?" Emily whispered, dropping the mop. It clattered loudly against the marble floor. The sound echoed through the silent mansion like a gunshot. Joshua took a step forward, his hands trembling with rage. He had trusted Victoria. He had left his daughter in her care while he traveled for business. And this was what she had done. "What is going on here?" Joshua asked slowly, his voice dangerously calm. Victoria opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say a word, Emily ran toward her father. She crashed into his arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "Daddy, I'm sorry," she cried. "I tried to be good. I tried so hard." Joshua held her tight, his heart breaking into a million pieces. He looked over his daughter's head at Victoria, and in that moment he knew everything had changed. But what he didn't know yet was just how far Victoria's cruelty had gone. And when he found out the whole truth, his response would shake everyone who heard the story. What had Victoria done to his daughter while he was away? For years ago, everything had been different. The mansion was full of laughter and warmth. Emily's mother, Sarah, would wake up early every Saturday morning to make pancakes shaped like hearts and stars. Sarah would sing while she cooked, and little Emily would dance around the kitchen in her pajamas. Joshua would join them, and together they felt like the happiest family in the world. But then came the accident. A rainy night, a slippery road, and in one terrible moment, Sarah was gone forever. Emily was only 4 years old when she lost her mother. 4 years after that, Joshua tried his best to fill the emptiness in their home. He bought Emily toys, took her on trips, and held her every night when she cried for her mommy. But he knew something was missing. That's when he met Victoria at a charity event in Los Angeles. She was elegant, beautiful, and seemed kind. She smiled at Emily and brought her gifts. She said all the right things. Joshua thought he had found someone who could help heal their broken family. 6 months later, he married Victoria, hoping to give Emily a mother figure again. At first, everything seemed fine. Victoria was sweet when Joshua was around. She would hug Emily and call her sweetheart. She would set the table for family dinners and laugh at Joshua's jokes. But Joshua traveled often for his business. He owned hotels across the country and had to visit them regularly. That meant leaving Emily at home with Victoria for days, sometimes weeks at a time. What Joshua didn't know was that the moment his car left the driveway, Victoria's mask would slip off. Her smile would fade and her voice would turn cold. It started small. Victoria would tell Emily to clean up her toys immediately, or she wouldn't get dessert. Then she started making Emily help the housemaid, Mary, with simple tasks like folding napkins. "You're not a princess," Victoria would say coldly. "Your father spoils you too much. You need to learn discipline." Emily tried to tell her father during their phone calls, but Victoria was always listening nearby. Whenever Emily started to speak, Victoria would give her a sharp look that made the little girl go quiet. "Is everything okay, princess?" Joshua would ask over the phone. Emily would glance at Victoria standing in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes warning. "Yes, Daddy," Emily would whisper. Everything is fine. But everything was not fine. Week by week, Victoria's treatment got worse. She started waking Emily up at 6 in the morning to help prepare breakfast. She made the child wash dishes until her small hands turned red and sore. One morning, Victoria pulled out a faded maid's uniform from a drawer. She threw it at Emily's feet and said, "From now on, you'll wear this during the day. You're old enough to earn your keep in this house." Emily stared at the uniform, tears streaming down her face. "But I'm not a maid," she whispered. Victoria's eyes flashed with anger. "You eat food that others cook. You sleep in a bed that others clean. That makes you no different from the help. Now put it on." That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, Emily had worn the uniform every single day. She scrubbed floors, carried heavy trays, and served Victoria's friends at fancy dinner parties. The worst part was the slap. Just 2 nights ago, Emily had accidentally dropped a fork during one of Victoria's parties. The sound had echoed through the dining room, and all of Victoria's wealthy friends had turned to stare. Victoria had stood up slowly, walked over to Emily, and slapped her across the face in front of everyone. "You can't even stand properly," she had hissed. Emily had held back her tears and cleaned up the mess with shaking hands. That night, she had cried herself to sleep, hugging the teddy bear her real mother had given her years ago. Now, standing in her father's arms after weeks of suffering, Emily finally felt safe enough to let it all out. But would her father believe what had really happened while he was gone? Joshua held Emily tightly, feeling her small body shake with sobs. He gently pulled back and looked at her face. That's when he saw it, a faint bruise on her cheek, barely hidden under her tears. His jaw clenched. "Emily, look at me," he said softly. "Who hit you?" Emily's eyes darted toward Victoria, then back to her father. Fear flickered across her face. She had learned over the past weeks that telling the truth brought punishment. "Nobody, Daddy," she whispered. "I just fell." Joshua knew his daughter. He had raised her for 8 years. He could tell when she was lying, and right now, terror was written all over her face. He stood up slowly, still holding Emily's hand. His eyes locked onto Victoria, who was now fidgeting with her expensive necklace. She tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Victoria," Joshua said, his voice steady but cold. "Why is my daughter dressed like this?" Victoria laughed nervously. "Oh, Joshua, you're overreacting. I was just teaching her responsibility. You know how spoiled children can become if they don't learn to work hard." "Spoiled?" Joshua repeated, his voice rising. "She's 8 years old. She should be playing with dolls, not mopping floors." "I was only trying to help," Victoria said quickly. "You're always traveling and someone needs to teach her discipline." Her mother clearly never did. The moment those words left her mouth, the air in the room turned ice cold. Joshua took a step forward and Victoria actually backed up. "Don't you ever," Joshua said slowly, each word like a hammer, "speak about my late wife again." Mary, the head housemaid, appeared in the doorway. She had been working for the Crawford family since before Emily was born. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying. "Sir," Mary said quietly, "I'm so glad you're home." Joshua turned to her. "Mary, tell me the truth. What has been happening in this house?" Mary glanced at Victoria, then at little Emily. She had been warned by Victoria to stay silent, threatened that she would lose her job if she spoke. But seeing Emily's tear-stained face gave her courage. "Sir, it's been terrible," Mary began, her voice shaking. "Madam has been making Miss Emily work like a servant. She wakes her up at dawn to clean. She makes her serve food at parties. And 2 nights ago..." Mary paused, tears rolling down her cheeks. 2 nights ago, she slapped Miss Emily in front of all her friends because the child dropped a fork. Joshua closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, they were filled with a fury that made even Victoria take another step back. "Is this true?" he asked Victoria. "They're lying," Victoria said quickly. "That old woman has always hated me. And Emily is just a dramatic child who wants attention." "I have security cameras," Joshua said quietly. Victoria's face went completely white. "What?" "I installed security cameras 3 months ago," Joshua continued. "Throughout the house. For protection. They record everything and send footage directly to my phone." He pulled out his phone and held it up. "Should we watch what really happened while I was gone?" Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish. No words came out. Her hands started trembling and all the color drained from her face. Joshua walked past her toward the living room. "Everyone come with me," he said. "Let's see the truth." Emily held Mary's hand as they followed. Victoria stood frozen in the hallway, knowing that everything she had done was about to be exposed. Joshua turned on the large television screen in the living room. He connected his phone and began scrolling through the camera footage from the past 3 weeks. "Let's start with last Saturday," he said coldly. "The night of your dinner party." As the video began to play, Victoria realized there was nowhere left to hide. What would the footage reveal, and how would Joshua react when he saw the full extent of his wife's cruelty? The television screen flickered to life and the footage began to play. The timestamp showed last Saturday evening, just 5 days ago. The camera captured the grand dining room perfectly. There was Victoria, dressed in a stunning red gown, laughing with her wealthy friends. Wine glasses sparkled under the chandelier. The women wore jewelry that cost more than most people's cars. And there in the corner stood Emily. She wore that faded gray uniform, holding a silver tray that was almost too heavy for her small arms. Her face looked pale and frightened. "Tina, bring the wine," Victoria's voice commanded from the speakers. Joshua noticed she had even been calling his daughter by the wrong name. On screen, Emily walked forward carefully, her hands shaking so badly that the glasses on the tray clinked together. Victoria's friends turned to stare at her with curious eyes. "Is that the daughter?" one woman whispered, loud enough for the camera to catch. "Why is she dressed like a maid?" Victoria just smiled and said nothing. Emily placed the glasses down one by one, concentrating so hard that her little tongue stuck out slightly. Joshua felt his heart breaking as he watched. Then came the moment with the fork. Emily accidentally knocked it off the table while serving dessert. The metal hitting the marble floor sounded like thunder in the quiet room. Everyone stopped talking. All eyes turned to the little girl. Victoria stood up slowly, her face twisted with anger. She walked around the table, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Then, without warning, she raised her hand and slapped Emily hard across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the speakers. Joshua flinched as if he had been hit himself. Beside him, Emily buried her face in Mary's dress, not wanting to relive the memory. On screen, Emily stood completely still after the slap, her cheek bright red. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stood there, a little soldier trying to be brave. "Clean it up," Victoria's cold voice said. "And stop crying. No one likes a weak child." But Emily wasn't crying. Not yet. She knelt down and wiped the floor with a napkin while Victoria's friends sat in uncomfortable silence. Only when she thought no one was watching did a single tear fall onto the marble. Joshua paused the video. His hands were shaking with rage. He turned slowly to face Victoria, who was now standing in the doorway with tears running down her face. "Joshua, please," Victoria began, her voice desperate. "I can explain. I was just trying to teach her." "Teach her what?" Joshua interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. "To be afraid in her own home? To hide bruises from her father? To feel worthless?" He pressed play again. The next clip showed Victoria in the kitchen, yelling at Emily for spilling a drop of orange juice. Then another clip of Emily scrubbing the bathroom floor at 6 in the morning, her eyes barely open. Another video showed Victoria grabbing Emily's arm roughly and dragging her down the hallway. "Your father isn't here to protect you now," Victoria's voice hissed. "This is my house and you'll do as I say." Joshua had seen enough. He turned off the television and stood up. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with a fury that made Victoria back away. "I trusted you," Joshua said, his voice shaking. "I brought you into this home. I gave you everything. And you used that trust to torture my child. I made mistakes," Victoria sobbed. "But I did it because I care." She needed discipline. Her mother spoiled her and I was trying to fix that. "Her mother," Joshua said slowly, "loved her more in one day than you ever could in a lifetime. Her mother would have given her life for Emily. What did you give her? Pain, fear, bruises." Victoria fell to her knees, her expensive dress spreading around her on the floor. "Please, Joshua. I love you. Don't throw me out. I'll change. I promise I'll be better." Joshua looked down at her without pity. "Love doesn't hurt children, Victoria. Love protects them. Love sacrifices for them. What you showed my daughter wasn't love. It was cruelty." He turned to Mary. "Please help Victoria pack her things. She's leaving tonight." Victoria's sobs grew louder. "You can't do this. I'm your wife." "Not anymore," Joshua said firmly. What would happen next as Victoria was forced to leave, and could Emily ever truly heal from the trauma she had endured? An hour later, Victoria stood in the grand hallway with 2 suitcases at her feet. Her makeup was smeared from crying, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She looked around the mansion one last time at the golden chandelier, the marble floors, the expensive paintings on the walls. Everything she had wanted was slipping through her fingers. The wealth, the status, the power of being Mrs. Crawford. All of it was disappearing because of one little girl. "This isn't fair," Victoria said bitterly, looking at Joshua one final time. "I gave up everything to marry you. I could have had anyone, but I chose you." Joshua stood at the top of the staircase, holding Emily's hand. "You didn't choose us, Victoria. You chose our money. You chose the lifestyle. You never chose to love my daughter." Victoria's eyes flashed with anger. "She's not even my real daughter. Why should I have to pretend to love someone else's child?" Those words hung in the air like poison. Emily gripped her father's hand tighter, and Joshua felt her small body tense beside him. "That's exactly why you have to leave," Joshua said quietly. "Because a real mother doesn't need to pretend. A real mother loves without conditions." Mary appeared with the final suitcase and set it down firmly. "The taxi is here, madam," she said, her voice cold and formal. Victoria grabbed her bags and walked toward the door. But before stepping outside, she turned back one more time. Her eyes met Emily's across the hallway. "You think you've won," Victoria said to the little girl. "But you're going to be alone again. Your father will find someone new, and she might be even worse than me." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but before she could respond, Joshua spoke up firmly. "Get out of my house, Victoria. And don't ever contact us again." Victoria's laugh was bitter and cold. "You'll regret this, Joshua Crawford. Mark my words." Then she was gone. The heavy door closed behind her with a final, echoing thud. The sound of the taxi driving away faded into the night, and suddenly the mansion was quiet again. Joshua let out a long breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He knelt down beside Emily and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. "She's wrong, you know," he said softly. "You're not going to be alone. You have me, and I'm never letting anyone hurt you again." Emily threw her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I should have told you sooner. I was just so scared." "No, baby," Joshua whispered, his own voice breaking. "I'm the one who should be sorry. I should have seen what was happening. I should have been here to protect you." Mary brought them both tissues and a tray of hot chocolate. She had made it the way Emily's real mother used to, with extra marshmallows and a sprinkle of cinnamon on top. Emily took a sip and smiled for the first time in weeks. "It tastes like Mommy's," she said quietly. Joshua smiled too, though tears rolled down his cheeks. "Your mother loved you so much, Emily. And wherever she is now, I know she's watching over you." They sat together in the living room, father and daughter, just holding each other as the rain began to fall outside. The soft patter against the windows was soothing, like nature itself was washing away all the pain. "Daddy?" Emily asked after a long silence. "Yes, princess? Are you going to travel again for work?" Joshua looked at his daughter's worried face and made a decision right then and there. "Not for a long time. I'm going to work from home now. I'm going to be here every single day." Emily's face lit up with joy. "Really? Every day?" "Every single day," Joshua promised. "We're going to have breakfast together and lunch and dinner. We're going to play games and watch movies. And on Saturdays we're going to make pancakes shaped like hearts and stars, just like your mom used to do." Emily giggled, the sound like music after weeks of silence. "Can Mary help us? I don't think we know how to make them shaped right." Mary laughed from across the room. "Of course, my dear. I'll teach you everything your mother taught me." As the night grew darker, Emily began to yawn. Joshua carried her upstairs to her bedroom, which was decorated with pink curtains and stuffed animals. He tucked her into bed and sat beside her. "Daddy?" Emily whispered sleepily. "Yes, baby? Do you think Mommy knows that you saved me tonight?" Joshua felt his throat tighten with emotion. He bent down and kissed his daughter's forehead gently. "I think she's been watching over you this whole time, keeping you strong until I could get home." Emily smiled and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was fast asleep, peaceful for the first time in weeks. But would their lives truly return to normal, or had Victoria's cruelty left scars that would take much longer to heal? 3 months had passed since that terrible night. The mansion slowly came back to life, filled with the warmth and laughter it had lost for so long. Every morning, Joshua woke up early to make breakfast with Emily, and they would laugh when the pancakes came out crooked. Emily no longer wore that horrible gray uniform. Joshua had Mary burn it in the backyard fireplace the very next day. Instead, Emily wore colorful dresses, jeans with her favorite cartoon characters, and sometimes even her mother's old scarves that still smelled faintly of lilies. The bruise on her cheek had faded completely, But Joshua knew that some wounds took longer to heal than others. Emily still had nightmares sometimes. She would wake up crying, calling for her daddy, afraid that Victoria had come back. But each time Joshua was there, he would hold her close and remind her that she was safe now, that no one would ever hurt her again. One Saturday morning, Emily came downstairs wearing a bright yellow dress. Her braids were neatly done by Mary, and she was carrying her teddy bear, the one her real mother had given her years ago. "Daddy, look," Emily said excitedly. "Mary helped me make breakfast for you this time." On the table sat a plate of pancakes shaped like hearts and stars, just a little burned around the edges but made with so much love. Joshua felt tears prick his eyes as he sat down. "They're perfect, Princess," he said, taking a big bite. "Your mom would be so proud of you." Emily beamed with happiness. This was the daughter Joshua remembered, confident, joyful, full of life. Slowly but surely she was coming back to herself. Later that afternoon, Joshua received a letter in the mail. It was from Victoria's lawyer. She was asking for money, claiming she deserved part of his wealth because they had been married. Joshua read the letter once, then calmly tore it into pieces. He had already spoken to his own lawyers. Victoria would get nothing. The security camera footage had proven everything, and several of her former friends had also come forward to testify about what they had witnessed. "Is everything okay, Daddy?" Emily asked, noticing the torn paper. Joshua smiled and pulled her onto his lap. "Everything is perfect, baby. Some people try to take things that don't belong to them, but the truth always wins in the end." Emily nodded wisely, though she didn't fully understand. "Like in my storybooks when the good guys always win?" "Exactly like that," Joshua said, hugging her tight. That evening they had a special dinner. Joshua had invited some of Emily's school friends over for a party. The house was filled with children's laughter, balloons, and the smell of birthday cake, even though it wasn't Emily's birthday. "Why are we having a party?" one of Emily's friends asked. Emily looked at her father, who nodded encouragingly. "Because we're celebrating being happy again," Emily said simply. As the children played games and ate cake, Mary pulled Joshua aside. "Sir, I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner about what Madame Victoria was doing." Joshua shook his head. "Mary, you were threatened. You were afraid of losing your job. I understand. But Miss Emily suffered because I stayed silent," Mary said, tears in her eyes. "And then you found your courage and told the truth when it mattered most," Joshua replied. "That's what counts. You helped save my daughter." Mary wiped her eyes and smiled. "She's a special child, sir. Just like her mother was a special woman." That night, after all the guests had gone home, Joshua tucked Emily into bed once again. She was exhausted but happy, her face flushed from playing all evening. "Daddy?" Emily said as he was about to turn off the light. "Yes, Princess? I'm not scared anymore." Joshua felt his heart swell with relief and pride. "I'm so glad, baby. You never have to be scared again." "And Daddy?" Emily continued, hugging her teddy bear. "I think Mommy sent you home early that day. I think she was watching over me the whole time." Joshua sat back down on the edge of her bed. "I think you're absolutely right. Your mother's love never left this house. It's been here all along, protecting you." Emily yawned and snuggled deeper into her blankets. "I love you, Daddy. I love you more than anything in this whole world," Joshua whispered. As he walked out of her room, Joshua paused at the family portrait in the hallway. His late wife smiled back at him from the photograph, her arm around his shoulders, little Emily on her lap. "Thank you," Joshua whispered to the picture. "Thank you for keeping her strong until I could get home." The house was quiet now, peaceful. Outside, the moon cast silver light across the gardens. Inside, a father and daughter slept soundly, no longer haunted by fear or cruelty. Victoria was gone and she would never return. The mansion belonged to the people who truly loved each other again. Emily would grow up knowing that her father had chosen her, protected her, and fought for her when she needed him most. And that love, real, sacrificial, protective love, was the greatest gift any parent could give their child. It was the kind of love that heals all wounds, that drives away darkness, and that makes a house finally feel like home again. The story had ended not with revenge or bitterness, but with restoration. Emily had her father back. Joshua had his daughter back. And together they had their home back, a home built not on wealth or appearance but on genuine love and trust. That was the message that would echo long after the last light was turned off. Love protects. Love fights. Love never gives up. And in the end, love always wins. We've come to the end of today's story. I hope it touched your heart. Thanks for watching and staying with us till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?